Is my screen visible? Okay. So guys, this is another link for Sanity docs. I'm sharing it here. Yeah. So this project section is what we're going to build today. So we'll get started. Yeah. So now if you see here, all the data like the project name, okay, and the about part and what the stack is, okay, the repository link and the deployment link, the date the project was created on, all these are being fetched from Sanity. What if you actually see the code for this, right? One second. So I've just built one project card, okay? So I've just styled for one card, okay, just one card, and then I'm fetching the data from Sanity, mapping the card for generating all the projects that I have, okay? So that's what I'm trying to do here. So the so what is Sanity? Sanity is like a content management system. So the benefits of using Sanity is that now think of this portfolio. I have say 4 projects. Instead of having to create 4 separate cards for each project, I'm creating one card. I'm storing my data somewhere, like just like we store in backend, like say MongoDB or anywhere. A content management system makes it much more easier, a more simpler version of storing your data, and then you can easily fetch it and map it for your components. All right. One of the biggest benefit of Sanity is that it's very user friendly, and you don't even need to be a tech person to uh, manage the data on the Sanity Studio. So let me just show you guys what the Sanity Studio looks like. So if I go to the URL kevinpaul.xyz/studio, it will take us to the Sanity dashboard. It will take us to the Sanity dashboard, and this is what the Sanity dashboard looks like. So I'm fetching my skills, my about section, the projects, the experience, all of these parts from Sanity. So for now, today's example, we'll be just checking out the project section. So if we head to the projects, I have created 4 projects. Okay. Now say you go into any one of them. So I have a slug. So I'll get to what slug and all these, each of these things mean. But you can see I've given the name, I've given the repository link, I've given the deployment link and the date it was created, a bit about details, and I've added the skills and so on. So I mean, this really simplifies your process of storing data, which is constantly being updated. Suppose you have a blog and you want to keep adding new blogs instead of having to go and create a new card for it or open the code again and create, put all the data over there. If you use something like a content management system like Sanity, I can just go here and create a new project like this. If I click on this button, I can just create a new project like new project and new project. I can give some random link. I can give a date. This is a new project and let's add some skills. Okay, and if I click on publish, it's going to be published. Now, it might take some time to be shown on my website, but let's just go back and see if we have a new card. So yeah, it's going to take some time, but after some time you'll be able to see one more card, which of the new project. Okay, so that's basically what Sanity is about. So now let's go ahead and create a new Sanity project. So this is a this is what the code will look like in the end. So the Sanity demo repository. I've shared the link. I'm just sharing it again, so you guys can check that out when once the session is done. So let's go ahead and start this project. First thing we'll need to do is create a new Next.js application. You can use it with React or any other framework also. But because we did a KT on Next.js, we'll go with Next.js, right? So I hope all of you know how to use Next.js now. I'll just increase the font size. All right. This is a Notion page that I created. So this is the entire Sanity setup process. So we'll use this. Okay, you can use this for creating your Sanity project. Okay. Now we'll just go ahead with the Next.js project and create with TypeScript, use ESLint, Tailwind CSS, yes for source directory. We'll use the app directory. We don't need input aliases. And there we have it. Our TypeScript project is getting initialized. Yeah, the Slash Studio. Yeah, so there's basically a package called Next Sanity. So initially, like the old method was basically like you would have a Next.js project and you would have a separate Sanity project. So inside your Sanity project, you basically have the code for a dashboard like this. So you would run your Next.js project on localhost 3000 and you would run Sanity project simultaneously on localhost 33333. So you get to see this dashboard over there. So that's what the old method was. But now what they've done is they've given an option to integrate that Sanity dashboard into your Next.js application. So we'll see how that's being done. So this is the package that lets you do that. So they recently updated this package. So there was the old method. You would have to import all these things from this docs over here, and then you would have to make it work. But now it's really simplified, and we'll go through the process. Okay. All right. So the TypeScript Next.js project is done. Let's create the sanity. Let's create the sanity project. We'll just paste this. So just PNPM. You can use npm or yarn. Create sanity at latest, and let's click enter. So is the font size okay for all? Okay. Yeah, but the terminal doesn't increase in size. This is better. We'll keep it to this. Yeah, one more person is trying to join. Nice. So now let's create a new project. So let's click enter. So if you see here, all these steps, there are 10 steps to create the setup. So the first one will be yes. Let's create a new project. The project name can be say sanity dash project. Now we have an option for setting the dataset configuration. So what the dataset configuration is basically you have two options, either production or development. So if you want to build your project on development and then push it to project production, you have that option. But now we'll just go with production because it's not very important code. So I'll just click yes. So it's creating the dataset. And now, would you like to add configuration files for Sanity project in the Next.js folder? So if you click no for this, it will create a separate folder for Sanity, and your Sanity project will exist in a separate folder. If you want it to exist on the same Next.js application, you'll have to click yes. Do you want to use TypeScript? Yes. Would you like to use an embedded Sanity studio? So this slash studio that I showed you guys, this is our embedded studio. And if you want to use this dashboard within your application as a separate page, you can click yes for this option. So would you like to use the Next.js app directory for the routes? Yes. And would you like to use, yeah. So what is the directory? Now, if you see here, I've given slash studio as the page. Okay. So that's the same thing we're going to do here. By default, it's slash studio. So we'll just click enter. And the next thing is, should we create a project template? So there are different options for you. You can have a blog or else, okay, I think they removed the other options. There were two more options before. Yeah, so you can either create a clean project or you can have a predefined schema like for a blog. So now we'll just go with clean project with no predefined schema. Let's click enter. And would you like to add the project ID and data set to your env file? So we'll click yes. And I guess that's about, yeah, all the 10 steps have been covered by now. So once this installs, we'll have a few peer dependencies to install and we'll just do that. And we're basically done for the Sanity setup. So does anyone have any doubts in the Sanity setup? It's very simple. This is what it is. If you want to try it on your own, you can do that. Okay. Yeah. Before it wasn't a CLI option, so you would have to create it manually. But now it's just a CLI option, so you can set it. And if you see here, one sec. If I go to the SRCs, yeah, inside the app directory, a new folder is created called Studio. So that becomes your page. So inside that you have a dynamic route and then page.tsx. Nothing, nothing, just nothing to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Initially, you'll have to go to Sanity Studio, and then you would have to search here how to add the embedded studio. Yeah, this thing, make Sanity. You have to click here, and then you have to copy paste this. That's what the old method was, but now they've just added everything to the same one. Yes. So we have a few peer dependencies. We'll just install that.
This is a
And
special package, right? ये next sanity था, as you mentioned, right?
yeah, yeah, it uses Next
So
Sanity under the hood, but
right.
that's
Fair. So essentially, it's the app router only of the currently.
yeah, yeah, app router. But inside
Fair,
that, a new
fair.
page is there called Studio.
Got it. Okay, so that's where all the things happen, right? For
Yep,
sanity. How
yep,
do
yep.
you? Okay, I think we'll get to that eventually. But yeah, I would like to see like how you would get the data from the CMS itself. थोड़ा interesting
Uh,
है.
yeah, it's just a simple, fetch. We're
Right.
just
Okay.
okay. So
Yeah, you
yeah,
work. I'll watch.
yeah. So yeah, our project setup is done for Sanity. Now we have a couple of new pages. So we'll just go into each one of these pages and see what it is. So that said, you don't have to do anything more. Okay, the setup is done. So all this here, you just need to understand what it is. And before we do that, if we head to your Sanity dashboard, one sec, Sanity IO slash manage. If you go, that's your personal, dashboard of Sanity. So you can see a new project has been created here called Sanity project. So I've created this from my CLI. Okay, I haven't come. You have an option to come here and create a new project, but we have created this from our CLI. So if you're using Sanity for the first time, you have to install Sanity CLI, and there's a separate process for that. Okay, get started. So you have to basically connect with your GitHub account and or any other, even Google sign up is there, I guess. But now because I'm already connected, it's not requesting for that. So yeah, this is my Sanity project. Let's just enter that. So I have a project ID. Okay, it's this thing. Uh, and the data set is by default in production because we set it as production. Okay, and rest of the things we'll see later. Now let's just come back here and let's have a look at this file called sanityconfig.ts. So we're importing two things from Sanity. First one is the vision tool, and the second one is the desk tool, and then the define config from Sanity. So I want you to focus on this vision tool and desk tool. Let's just head to, yeah, this is my portfolio. So if you see here, there's one thing called desk, and there's another one called vision. So these are the two plugins that we are importing from Sanity. So what your desk tool gives you is that on this studio page, you basically get this dashboard where you can create and add new projects and stuff. So that's what your desk plugin gives you. Your Vision plugin, on the other hand, it's for you to query the data from the Sanity CMS. So we're using a language called Grok, and using Grok, we can create a query and we can fetch our results. I'll show you how it's done. And if you see here, there's also an API version. So it is mandatory to have your API version set for your Sanity project. And all of that is being done in your configuration itself when you set it up. So if you see here, yeah, from the Sanity ENV, we are getting API version, data set, project ID. So the project ID is what I showed you here. This is the project ID. Production is the data set, and the API. There was an option for the API version, but currently this is the latest version. Sec. This is the latest version of the Sanity. All right. So yeah, so that's what we're fetching from Sanity ENV. We're not doing any of this. It's been done already, so you don't have to worry about any of that. I'm just showing you all the files that have been created. Okay. We're also importing a schema from Sanity schema. So then here is where we are using this define config that we got from Sanity to config our Sanity project. So we need our base path to be /studio, like it's here, like we have here /studio. That base path is what is being defined here. So if I change it here, I can change my base path. Similarly, I have to change the folder here. This is the project ID. This is the data set. This is the schema that we have imported here. The plugins, the Vision tool, and the desk tool. That's what we are adding here as the plugins. Okay. And the Vision tool, we're passing in the API version. So if you see here, this is the API version. So that's it for the Sanity config TS. Let's have a look at the Sanity CLI. So if you want to run your Sanity CLI, if you want to use the Sanity CLI and run your project on localhost, you can use this. So again, this is the configuration for that. You don't have to worry about anything. It's just the same project ID data set, the define CLI config, and you're just passing in the project ID and data set. Okay, that's it for that. Then we have, yeah, inside the ENV variables, we have added the project ID and the data set. So this was my project ID. This was my project ID and the default data set. So if you want, you can change this to development. So this is the project ID. So it has been added through the CLI setup itself. Now let's have a look at this Sanity. Okay, inside the app router, we have a page called Sanity, called Studio. The Studio has a dynamic route, and inside the dynamic route, we have page.tsx. So this page.tsx, if you have, if you're familiar with Next.js 13, you know that all the components in Next.js 13 are basically server components. Because we're trying to render the Sanity Studio on the client, we'll have to use the use client method. And if you see here, here is where we're importing the Next Studio. That is what you see here. This is Next Studio. So that's what we're importing over here from Next Sanity Studio. And the config from Sanity config. And this is the studio page. So this page that you're able to see here, that page is being created by this Next Studio. And we're passing in the config that we have here into that into this page. All right. So previously you would have to go to Next Sanity, and this is the same page, that config that we have. And yeah, this is the old version for the studio page. Right. So they say to go to the app directory /studio and then a dynamic route and then page.tsx. So all of this information is there here too. So you can check it out. This is the page. So if you want to check that, okay, is your project going right or not, you can just check it out here. Okay. Now let's just lastly check out this Sanity folder. So this Sanity folder basically has a library folder, which has a client.ts. This is what creates your Sanity client. Again, inside this, you're passing in your API version data set, and if you want to use a CDN or not. So we're just passing these informations in here, and then we're able to create a client. Image.ts. So if you're using images in using Sanity, suppose you upload an image to Sanity, when you're fetching it, there might be problems in rendering it on the screen. So in that cases, you can use this create image URL builder, which comes from Sanity. There is docs for this in the Sanity docs. If you check out, you should be able to find that image builder. Yeah, so this image URL builder. So it takes the image that you have on Sanity and generates a URL for that. And this URL is then sent to your image, next image, this thing, and you can easily render it over there. All right. So that's what the image.ts file is about. You have an env.ts. So over here is where, yeah, we are defining our API version. So the latest API version is, well, 2023 6.19, and your data set is production. And all we're doing here is we're giving an error if the environment variable is missing. So suppose I remove the production environment variable from here, this is going to throw me an error saying that missing environment variable, next public sanity dataset. Same thing for the project ID. If it's missing, it will say that the missing environment variable, next public sanity project ID. And we're not using a CDN by default, so we can set that as false. And this is the function for setting throw the new error message. All right. Now we have the schema.ts. So just like any other backend, we'll have to define a schema for the type of data we'll be storing on Sanity. So for each of my, if you check out here, let's head to the desk tool. So for the skills section, if you see, uh, over here, each of these are the skills that I've imported, and that's what is being fetched here. So the skills being fetched here, that's what this part is about. So inside the skills, I just need the name and I need the logo. If I head to the about section, I need my just the salutation name and then the bio. If I go to the project section, I've created multiple projects. Okay, and look at the project's details. So there's name, there's repository, deployment, date, details, skills. So each one of them, okay, require a separate schema because I want my project data to look different. I want the experience data to look different. I want the skills data, the about data, all of them to look different. So I'm creating a separate schema for each of these. All right. And if I want to have multiple projects, yes, all of that will have the same schema. But for projects, you have to create one schema like that. So over here, we're going to create our schema. So before that, let's just create a new folder called utils. And inside this, we're going to fetch the data from Sanity. All right. Now, before we do that, let's create a new schema. So let's create a schema folder just to store the schemas too. And inside this, we're going to basically just build out this project section. So for doing that, let's create a new file called projects.ts. And let me show you what the schema will look like. All right, so this is how you define a schema in Sanity. So we're basically importing two things, define field and define type. There are two things that we're importing. Now, uh, projects is a separate schema, right? So first thing you have is you're exporting this type, which will be your projects. So you need a name for it. You need a title that you want to give. So if you have a look here, the title is this projects. So under the hood, Sanity is referring it with this name called projects. What type is this? So it's a document type. So if you head to Sanity docs, you should have the schemas. Yeah, schema field types. Okay. So if you check out here, you'll have clear information about what kind of schema can you set up. So this project that we have here, this is a document, this is a document, this is a document. All right. And inside that, we have each of these collections. Okay. So we're setting the type as a document, and inside that, it should have fields. So what are the fields supposed to be? Now, if you head to the projects, and let's open any one of them. So now look at the fields that I want. I need a slug. What is a slug? If you want to know what a slug is, I'll show you another example. While this loads, let's just continue. So we need name. I need the repository link. I need a deployment link. I need the date the project was created in. I need the details of the project and the skills. So I need basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need 7 fields, right? So I'm just defining each of the fields I need here. So there's a fields array, and inside the fields array, I'm defining each of the field that I need. So we have defined the type, and the type is a document. So all these are documents under the project schema, and inside that we have the fields. So if you have a look at the first field, that is say slug, let's show an example for that. Now just see what happened here. When I click on project property one, okay, it takes you to /property/property one. What happens here is this property's name is property one, and I've set a slug for this property as property one. This property one is a slug. I'm just creating a dynamic route, and I'm using this slug as a unique key or an identifier that I can input in that dynamic route. So if I'm in property one, so I see property one here, which is the slug of property one. Say I head back to property two and it says property two. So a slug is basically like a unique identifier kind of thing. So I want to define a slug for my project. So if you have a look here, altruist. So let's say the name for this slug will be slug, and I want to give a title. And your titles can have capital, but your names should not have capital letters. So the type is slug. So if you check out the types, we should have a schema types. Yeah. So if we head to the types, these are the different schema types that we have. We can have arrays, we can have block, boolean, date time, document, file, geopoint, image, number, object, reference, slug. Now if you just click on slug, all right? So you'll have examples of how to define a slug right here. So we'll have to give a title, we'll have to give a name, we'll have to give the type. If you want to give any other options inside it, we can do that. All right. So for each of the type, so the basic idea is you want to build a blog or any website where your content is constantly updating and you want to easily change it, you would use Sanity. Based on the type of data you want to show, you'll have to create a schema. Based on the fields that you need, you can use the schema types over here and create any type of project that you want. I hope that's clear. Does anyone have any doubt? All right, let's
Could
continue.
you, sorry. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask one. Could you repeat just the last thing you said? Like just this.
All right.
I think it was
Consuela, you want
regarding
to?
like changing data. Yeah.
Yeah. So suppose you want to create a blog application.
Hmm.
Uh, the last explanation I gave, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Suppose you want to create a blog application, and I'll have to keep adding new blogs, or I might want to change
Right.
some data in the blogs. So in these
Hmm.
situations, I'll have to go into the code and then I have to change the data that I've stored there, or I have to create
Right.
multiple cards again. To avoid this, you can use a content management system like Sanity. Now, for a blog, I would need some particular fields like the author, the title, the date when it was written, the content, maybe comments and reviews. So I can basically
Right.
create a separate schema for this blog. And each of this title, author, the date it was created, the blog itself, and the comments, all of these will be fields in that. So your fields are basically, you can create it using the schema types that are available. Suppose you want to create a list of comments. So you can have an array of comments.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's a comment
Got
section,
it.
there's an array, and each comment that goes in will be an element in the array, like that. So that's an
Yeah.
example of how you can use,
I have questions.
yeah.
Right. Sorry, I rejected that. But yeah, the first one is like, what's the difference between this and let's say an update or request? Let's say key I want to update the contents as it in the like just content, send an update request to a primary key and updates the contents of that thingy, of that particular record. But in this case, how would that work exactly? Like, I guess, huh?
So you're asking
Because
about like
it's
updating
like
it.
a page or the data being changed. Right? How does that work?
Yeah.
Like the
How
work.
does it
And
update?
one more thing was, so yes, yes.
Okay. So Sanity is continuously sending, it's basically the connection is like a stream. So it's continuously sending fetch requests and it's retrieving the data. So any kind of
Okay,
data that you change on the Sanity Studio,
right.
that data will be reflected on your application.
Okay, right, right, right.
All right. If I want to show,
Oh, the
yeah,
boss. Right. Dude, that's very cool.
yeah. Is your voice breaking or is my
Essentially,
voice breaking?
uh, I have it's not. Uh,
Okay.
it's,
Okay. Okay.
uh, I'll disconnect my what do you call it, headphones. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So how is the data stored exactly? Like, इसका tables का system क्या होता है? So what is the backend like?
How Sanity
You
is
told
storing
me,
the data?
I paid attention, but I was just yes.
I have no clue how Sanity is storing the
Yeah.
data, but I mean, it helps you store your data somewhere where you want, and it can just you can
Right.
fetch the data from there. I don't know how Sanity is doing it under the hood.
Fair. It's yeah. It's like a GUI thing, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's the perfect. It's much simpler essentially. It's a
Yes,
very simple. It's much simpler like backend kit also. So yeah,
yeah,
it is very cool. Yeah, please continue. Don't let me
yeah.
stop you. Yeah.
So yeah, this thing called Content Lake. Uh, yeah, it runs in the cloud. Yeah. So this is how it stores data. So you can check this out, Ishan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Which part? Which part?
I've sent it in
Can
the
you
chat.
this right?
Yeah,
Data docs. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I'll
Okay.
I'll pick up some. It should be coming in handy. Oh, वैसे when it comes to hybrid, should I first pick up Sanity or should I first pick up Firebase? Because अभी के तो this is interchangeable in my opinion. What do you think?
Uh, you should learn Firebase, and because Firebase is like a proper
Right, right, right.
database, and you even have multiple, like
Yeah, yeah,
authentication and other shit with Firebase. So that's a better option.
yeah. I
Sanity
started
is,
out with it.
it's
Right, right, right.
a peculiar use case where you have constantly changing data. So in
Yes.
that case, Sanity is a good option.
Hmm.
Now, the reason why
Okay,
using Sanity
so
in
yeah.
Taskmaster is because it's an event space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to create a new event,
Right, right, right.
instead of going and create,
Okay.
adding the data in the code, I can just come here and create a new event.
Right,
I can pass in the details.
right,
If I want to change some
right, right,
details,
right.
I can do that. So Sanity is the best option
Hmm.
for this kind of work. Now let's try this.
Understood.
I'm just changing the project name to Ishan and I'm clicking on publish.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's,
So
it might
what
take
I
some
what I
time.
get from that is that's fine. What I
Yeah,
get from this explanation is key when it comes to Taskmaster, I think we'll follow something along the lines of a microservice architecture. So user auth will happen in Firebase, and the events thing will happen in Sanity, right?
yep, yes, yes.
That's very streamlined, definitely. The
Yep,
stack is new to me, so it'll take some time to pick up, but it should be fun. And I think
yep,
Sanity काफी useful भी होगा in the future. It's kind of like Redis in that, like, Redis is a database, of course, but like still, it has its purpose essentially.
yep.
So yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, continue.
Okay. So yeah, that's what it is. And that was that. Yeah. So let's just see how I built the schema for this. So we had the slug. Okay, I'll just open it side by side. We had the slug. So the slug basically has a name, title, and the type. And after that, I'm passing in the option. So if I want to automatically create a slug, I can do that from by taking the title name. Okay. So from the title of the particular project, I can use that title and automatically generate a slug. I can set the max length for it, say 96. And the next one is the name of the project. So again, it's a name, and of course, it'll be of type string. Title I've given. Then I have the repository link. So the repository name is name and title I have, and the URL is the type for the repository link, right? Same thing for the deployment. I'm storing the date as of type string because I want the dashes and colons and everything. So I'm just storing it as type string. If I'm, and I guess there is also a type for that schema. Yeah, there is a date type. So if you want, you can use that too. All right. And then we have the details. So this is of type text because I want a lot of text to be present. So if you have a look here, there's a lot of text. So for that reason, I've used type text. If it's a smaller string, then I can use a type string. Then I need the skills. So I need the skills to be an array. So I just need an array of names, right? An array of strings. So what I'm doing here is creating a name of skills. Title is skills. Type is an array. Array of what? So it's an array of skill. Okay. Array of skills, which is of type string. So array of, okay, this is an array of type that we are passing string. And the title will be skill. So the name, each one of this is a skill. This is a skill, this is a skill, this is a skill of type string, and I'm passing in the value which is being stored. So this is how I've defined my schema. Does anyone have any doubts on that?
Oh, okay. So slug is also a data type, right?
Yeah, slug is a data type.
Okay. So if let's say for instance I type Ishan Khurana, so it'll be Ishan underscore Khurana because it's kind of a slug. Or is
Yeah.
it stored in a different way? Yeah, right. Okay. Any reason in particular that you chose slug versus for
Uh,
first name and last name?
yeah.
I
So
mean,
that's what I'm
we can
saying.
just go for it. Yeah.
So if you have a look here,
Hmm.
I have the prop. This is another website I made on Sanity. It's just
Right.
basically listing a few properties. So if you see
Got
here,
it.
say I have property one. Okay,
Hmm.
and this is the name of the property, and I want it to be there as a dynamic route.
Got it. Dynamic.
So if you see here, it says property one.
Yeah.
Now, if I go to say the next property,
Hmm.
so it says property two. So
Hmm.
consider a case where I have a different property name, but I want the URL to be something different. For that
Right.
particular use, I can use a slug, which
Right.
will then fill up the dynamic route,
Got it. So
right?
it works well with search queries, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, yeah, if you run a search, it'll get you the slug for the search and then it'll look it up in your Sanity database.
Uh, no, you wouldn't have to do that because
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
fetching the entire project, right? I'm just
Right.
once, yeah. If I'm trying to open this page, what I'm doing is I'm taking the slug and setting it as the dynamic route.
Right. Oh,
But
right. Sorry, yeah.
but the entire data is being fetched.
Got it. Instead of endpoints, it's the whole ass project, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Fair.
now
That's
that's
true.
how we
That's true.
define the yeah, that's how we define the schema. And once we've defined the schema, which is inside the schemas folder, I need to add it to the
Hmm.
schema.ts. So what we need
Right.
to do here is import the schema. One sec. So let's just import projects, which is inside schema, and we can add here projects. So I've imported the project schema, which is right here, and I'm adding it to the schema types. So I'm adding projects here. All right. So if you have multiple schemas, you can have all of them here, and then you can add those many of them. Okay. I hope that's clear. So once our schema is done and our project is defined, so now basically the entire configuration part of Sanity is done. Let's just spin up a server. Let's head to our Sanity studio and see what happens there. So let's do pnpm dev. All right. And let's just reload the localhost. Anyone else has doubts till now? Yes. So let's just head to slash studio. And if we head to slash studio on localhost 3000, a bit slow. Okay. So the first thing that we have to do is basically we're going to get a cross origin error because Sanity basically has an auth, so authentication. So it's not that anybody can just go to slash studio and edit all the details I have. So for that, you have to add your uh, studio page to add your URL to the cross origin. So now it's loading here, Sanity Studio, and it's going to give me an error saying that to access your project, you need to add the following URL as a cross origin to Sanity. All right. So for that, by default, it has 3333. We'll change that. We'll delete that. And let's add a new cross origin. Let's say localhost 3000. I want to allow credentials that is for authentication and click on save. Now let's try reloading this. And here it gives us the authentication. So even the authentication part, you don't have to handle it. Sanity is doing it for you. All right. And only I am the authorized user. So only I can log in. If I want to add multiple users, I have an option to do that too. Uh, Members, if I head to members, I can add other project members. So when we're working for Taskmaster, I'll add all of you guys over here, and I can even define roles for you guys over here. All right. So let's use GitHub, and I'll sign up. All right. Now we're on the Sanity Studio. The projects document that we created, the schema, we have it here. And now we don't have any documents yet. So let's create a new document. Okay. So yeah, now you'll have to fill all of this data once again. And to avoid this headache, what I'm going to do is use the project ID I have on this one and replace our project ID so that we can have the data already filled. So let me go to env and I'll just change the project ID. So I'm just doing this so that we don't have to fill all of the data again. So now I'm on the different project. This project is not Sanity project. It is on the Sanity demo. I've pasted this project ID so that I already have the details pre-fetched, pre-written. So yeah, there we have it. So once you add all the details, you can go ahead and click on publish, and only the published documents will be visible on Sanity, on your page. The If it's not being published, then it won't be shown on your page. All right. So if you're still working on one document and you want to just save anywhere and leave, that is also available. Only when you publish it, it will be visible. So if you see here, it has been published, 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 published. What I'm going to do now is just copy the front end code for the components. So I just go to, let's just minimize all of this. Inside the source directory, I'll create a folder called components. And inside this, I have another folder called projects. I'll have two files here, one called projects.tsx. I'll have another file called project card.tsx. And I'll just copy the code. So now we have basically set up the Sanity configuration. We have created our schema. One second. We've created a schema and we've added the details. Now it's time to fetch this detail onto our page and display it. All right. Now, one last thing. Yeah, two more things are left. Okay. One is to fetch the data. And for that, we'll have to also define the types. All right. So in our Sanity page, we created a utils folder with a folder called fetch data. So this is where we're going to fetch the data. So I told you that we have this language called Grok, using which we are going to query the data that we need. So this is the query we'll be using. So let's just have a look at the query. So we're importing the client from over here, library client, and then we're importing the grok language from Sanity. Then we are basically having an async function which returns from the client, it's fetching the data that we need for us. Now, this what we have here is basically our query. Let's just paste this on the vision tool and see what happens. All right, and let's click on fetch. So this is fetching all the data from our Sanity, and it is returning it as a response of an array of objects. So if you see here, see the first one, the first project, say one roof, and then you have another project. Where is this? Ticker. You have another project. Yeah, I named it to Ishan, and there's another project called Enigma. So all the details I have fetched. See what I'm doing here? I'm getting the project ID. I'm getting the project name. I'm getting the slug. So from the slug, basically, if I just get slug, like slug, and now if we try fetching, slug basically has two properties. And out of those two properties, I just need this particular current. So that's why I'm using that syntax where I say slug do. So from slug, I need the slug.current. Now let's fetch. So I'm getting just the slug. Okay. So this is basically a query language called Grok. I guess tutorials for this is available, but it's pretty simple if you're trying to understand it. We basically defined a type called projects. So if you see the schema right here, we defined a type. Okay, one sec. Here to schemas, there's a type called project, right? So that type is what we have here. So underscore type is equal to projects. From projects, I'm basically fetching the ID, the name. From slug, it returns two properties. I need slug.current, then the repository, the deployment date, details, and then skills. But skills is an array, so we're getting skills as an array. And that has 5 items, 7 items, 8 items like that. So this is how we fetch the data. So using this grok language, we're querying, and the vision tool helps us to check what kind of result we're getting for this particular query. So we're querying to the Sanity content lake and we're being returned this particular data. So that is what your vision tool helps you do. If you head to the desk tool, this is where you can add new projects and stuff. All right. So from the fetch data, what we're doing is we're having an async function called get projects. Inside this, I'm returning client fetch. Inside the client fetch, I am basically passing in the query inside a grok function. All right. Inside a grok function and passing in the query that we saw in the fetch vision tab or vision plugin that we're passing inside client.fetch. The client is what we created here. And yeah, that's it. So we basically have an async function for fetching the data from Sanity. Now what we are going to do is just head to our components projects page, and I'm going to import this get projects from dot dot slash sanity utils folder fetch data. So I'm getting the projects, get projects from there. All right. So then we have to define a type because we're using TypeScript. The whatever data we're getting from Sanity, we have to define a type for that. For that, let's go to the Sanity project. Let's create a new folder or a file called typings.ts. And inside this, I'll have to define a type for the project, for the data we're getting. All right, so let's just copy this and paste it here. So for those of you who don't know TypeScript, there's a thing called interface. It's basically like you're defining a structure in in C or C++. You're
Define.
defining a structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to call it projects type. And inside this, it's very simple. What do you have? ID is of type string. Name is of type string. The repository is a URL, but it's of type string. The deployment is of type string. The date is of type string. Details is type string. Now the skills is a string array. So you have string and then the brackets to symbolize that it's an array. So now we have the projects type also, and that we're importing inside the projects page. So now if you have a look at this, it's basically a component in which I'm getting the get projects from fetch data and I have the types. Now we have to fetch the data. So for fetching the data, I'm basically creating a variable called projects data and I'm using await and get projects. So the function that we created here in fetch data, that's what we're calling here. And whatever data that this query returns. So all of this data on the vision, all of this data that we're getting over here is being stored inside this project's data. All we have to do now is just map over this project's data because it's an array of objects. Okay, it's an array of objects. We have to just map over this particular project data, and that's it. Cards will be generated for your particular thing. So one sec. What else do we have to do here? Yes. So yeah. So now inside this, now we have all the data inside project data. So I'm just creating a map function. So mapping over project data. I'll close this. So now we set a type for each project that comes. If you have a look at the types, typing stays, yeah, we have set a type for each of the project. The project will have this type, but the all the projects that are coming together in the project's data, that is an array of all the projects. The type we have defined is for the particular project, but the project's data is an array of all the projects. So this type has to be set only for the project. So if you see here, I'm mapping through the project data, but for the each project data inside it, I'm passing in the type, projects type. We'll have to pass an index when you're mapping in TypeScript. So that the type for the index is number. And inside this, I'm mapping a project card. So if we were not using this method of mapping, we would have to create multiple project cards. So if you have 4 projects, you create 4 cards, and inside that you have the details and stuff. Now, because I have now based on the amount of projects I have on Sanity, those many cards will be displayed on my screen. So this is the component for project card. And inside this, I'm just passing the project as a prop and the key, I'm setting this as the index. So if you have a look at the project card right now, we need to install React icons because it's using React icons. So let me just install React icons. npm install React dash icons. So while this is downloading, okay, it's done. So yeah, let's have a look here. So now we're getting the project type from the typings.ts. And over here, we are again, we need to set a type for this import that we're getting here, this the prop that we're getting here called project data. I've called that project here, and I need to set a type for that. So I'm setting that the type for this will be the project type. Once you learn TypeScript, all of this will become very simple. For now, just follow along with the data fetching that's happening. So we fetch the data, we map through the data. Each project data we're passing in as a prop into the project card. And inside the project card, I'm just using this project. So if I need the over here, I'm showing the repository link. So inside the href, we basically need to pass project dot repository. Why? Because we are being returned the repository, right? So this project dot repository will give me this link. If I had to name, project.name will give me the name. Project.date will give me the date. Project.details will give me the details. Now again, the skills was an array. If you see here, skills is an array. So again, I need to map through skill, and each skill we'll set it as skill. All right. We're mapping through project.skills.map. Each skill we're setting over here. And then project.deployment. All right. Now let's just save all of this and let's just go check out our server. So if we check the server out, let's reload. Okay, I haven't called any of this on the page. So let's just go to the app directory. Inside the app directory, we should have the page file, layouts. Yes, I'll just copy it from here. And for the page, so inside the page, we're basically just calling that project component, and that's it, we're done. Inside the tailwind config, I need to pass some of the colors that I'm using. So let's head to tailwind config, and these are the colors that I'm using. So I'll just copy this and I'll paste it here. Now let's reload and see. Yep. So we have the projects and the data is being fetched from Sanity. All right. And that's what you're able to see over here. If I head to slash studio, let's go and try to change some data to see the changes. And suppose I change this to Ishan, click on publish. Sometimes there might be delay in the data showing up, but have a look at this. So it says Ishan. Ishan, what do you think?
I'm very happy.
All right. So you see how fast it is, right? So when they're
It
creating
is.
the
It
events
is.
page, yeah, when we're creating the events page, I'll have to continuously change data, right? In that case, I can use Sanity. And if I head to the studio, I can change anything anytime I want. And it's just instantaneous. Over here, I think I edited on this. Okay, I didn't edit for this guy. Okay, no issues. So yeah, maybe let's try something like let's say Kunal Cation is God and publish. So check out inside Enigma. I want the details to say Kunal Cation is God. So let's remove this and reload. So it says yeah, Kunal Cation is God. So yeah, that's about Sanity, and that's the simple project. So it might look a bit complicated if you're doing it for the first time, but just rewatch the recording if you can. And every single file that we have, the configuration files, I have, and the setup, I have it in the Notion file right here. And the project that we just created, the details or the code of that is there in Sanity demo. So you can just check it out right here. So yeah, that's it. Any doubts, guys?
No, it's pretty well explained. I'll definitely give it a try. It's a good rundown.
Yeah, cool. All right. Anyone else? Any doubts? Kunal, are you there? I think he muted the tab.
Yeah, maybe, but that's fine. Don't
Let's
take
say
it
I'll just.
personally. Yeah. But it is
Uh,
good.
yeah, it's going to take time because you're still new to Next.js and stuff. But once the you get used to the code, then it will be fine. Also, the TypeScript part, once you're used to it, it will be easy.
Definitely.
But like, just build one project now because I this
Yeah,
was the
yeah, yeah.
first Sanity project I made, and I was very confused when I made this. It took me almost 1 month to do this because I was really bad at TypeScript, and I
That's
made this in Jan actually, and
Jan.
I made my portfolio in just 3 days.
Holy shit.
Okay, 3 days, and my portfolio was done. So I was just shocked that this thing took
Wow.
me like 2 to 3 weeks to make, and then
Hmm.
this now it just became so easy.
Right, yeah. Sanity.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. You can just watch the recording again and try it out on your own.
Yeah. Done, done, done.